Welcome to the latest Inside Carolina Noon Dish. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. That's Don Callahan. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. And Don asked for a birthday gift, and I didn't get it for him. And you know what he wanted, folks? He wanted the official game ball of the Tar Heels. You see that, Don? That's nice.
I need to add it to the man tower. We're going to be doing some moving things around, so I need some more decor. So I'd love for Tommy to pick one up for me. He needs to have some sort of
the blue laces, the logo, the foots on here. Official game ball, folks. You can see how you can get it right here. Check out the video from Big Game USA.
You think you know North Carolina? It's not just the Smoky Mountains and the Old Well. This is Kenan Stadium, where the Jordan Fly Elite game ball makes its debut and its homecoming. Born to fly, built for Carolina. Snag your Carolina blue today.
You jealous, Don?
I am jealous.
Are you jealous?
I know where you live. I'm going to break into your house.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in here still. We need to do a video of like checking out our man towers. I call mine the way up. Yours is the man tower.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this ball is definitely a nice addition. Shout out to Big Game USA, sponsors of these shows. The link's in the description. I'll drop the link in the chat as well. You can get it, order it, have it, use it, practice with it, as some folks are doing. It's just a good football, and you'll see it on Saturdays in Kenan Stadium and elsewhere as North Carolina gets 25 season rolling. Let me put it back so folks don't miss it. Don, let's get into it. Top 5. Well, we haven't done this show in about a month.
Yeah.
So if you're like me, you can't remember who would have been our chat MVP from a month ago. So we're gonna reset.
It was a special one because it was, I believe, the last noon dish that we've done was with Greg, and it was a 2-hour noon dish.
That's right. Was it signing day?
It was signing day. I am pretty certain that was it. So yeah, I mean, I think people can understand why we probably don't have a chat MVP today, but it is great. I'm looking in here and I miss these guys, Sean Crowley and Preston, and some new names, Tar Heel Ron, Tar Heels 2 words, John Hurst, shout out, Buzzernet, Bruisernet. Wow. Bruisernet definitely earning some brownie points here.
Somebody on your family payroll.
For the chat MVP for this week. So, so it's great to see all these guys.
Somebody definitely maybe they'll get you a ball. Hey, Bruiser, Phillies and Big Game USA, get Don a Carolina official game ball.
I put it in the man tower. I put it right behind me.
Yeah, get rid of the old gritties and all that. But
can't get rid of the gritties.
I don't think we're ever going to get you rid of the Phillies, the gritties, and the Flyers, and Eagles too. But you're not an Eagles fan. It's weird.
I'm not an Eagles fan. No, not an Eagles fan.
I don't get it. I guess you cover too much football to worry about watching it. Speaking about watching, let's do a top 5. Folks in the chat. Folks in the chat, you've got top 5 teams you'll watch in the NCAA tournament, not including North Carolina. We'll just put that caveat in there in case they do not get there. They, of course, need to beat Duke on Friday night to be able to get to the NCAA tournament. But top 5 NCAA teams that you will pay attention to in the NCAA tournament. You can pick who you think will win. You can pick who you want to watch the most, whatever. Just pick a top 5 and get them in. We'll go through it at the end of the show. Don, big news of the week, I guess, is Eidan Buchanan flips from West Virginia to North Carolina. Got an article about it on the Tar Pit Premium message boards. Just sort of spill the beans here about what this means for North Carolina, what kind of player he is. Seems like we've talked about building from the inside out. Bill Belichick and his staff appear to be doing that for sure.
Well, it seems like, and we kind of had an idea about this, in January when the transfer portal stuff was kind of finalizing. But the one position, if we're being specific, that North Carolina hasn't really got a great answer for is that left tackle, that blindside protector. And Eidan is 6'8", long arms, plays for a great program in Maryland. And so he has the potential to develop into that. He has the tools certainly to develop into that blindside protector that every school is looking for. And it was a unique situation to where, West Virginia didn't have a head coach, which you didn't have a head coach when he signed in December, and he wanted to give the new coaches at West Virginia a chance, gave them a chance, didn't feel like it was for him. Actually, initially wanted to get his release from West Virginia and then immediately sign with Virginia Tech. But in between there, North Carolina jumped in there, and he decided to take an official visit to Chapel Hill, which he did last week, and then ultimately end up not only committing but signing with the Tar Heels pretty quickly.
Yeah, a large human being, 6'8", 310. You mentioned it is that Olney, Maryland, Lady
Olney.
of Good Counsel. How you say it?
I think it's Olney.
Olney? I don't know.
Olney.
Maryland High School, Lady of Good Counsel.
Good Counsel, yeah. I mean, Good Counsel is a well-known program.
Yeah, so you get him. I mean, the composite ratings have him as a mid 3-star. Is this another thing here where a lot of fans are obsessed with stars, and the higher the stars, the better, but Belichick appears to be getting guys that he wants to get, ranking or not. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, perhaps, but the other thing is like, what other options are there if you're trying to get someone in right before the season starts? I mean, the portal is going to open again, and maybe there could be someone who pops in, although I wouldn't count on it. I think it's not the position to where you expect the spring portal to be beneficial, but you just you never know. But I think your best opportunity for a portal offensive tackle happened in the first portal window. So this is just an opportunity to bring in a guy who definitely has the tools. As you said, I mean, he's not super highly rated, but it's definitely a guy who could potentially develop into what they're hoping for.
Yeah, and tell us about David Jackson. Appears to be another fellow from that school as well. You've got the article, the commitment Q&A on the site. Got him a picture with Coach Belichick on your article. Just tell us about him as well.
Yeah, so he was a guy who, and we'll get into this a little bit more this past week, but really the weekend, Friday and Saturday, were huge recruiting days for North Carolina. Friday being a practice with, and obviously North Carolina had two practices earlier in the week, but Friday obviously is easier for kids to travel to. So they had a good group on Friday. And then Saturday was the UNC Duke basketball game. And just like every prior head coach in recent years, Bill Belichick took advantage of that game to attract a large group of highly coveted recruits to Chapel Hill. And David Jackson was one of those guys. David Jackson actually visited for the entire weekend, attending practice on Friday and not leaving until Sunday. And before he walked out the door on Sunday, he committed to North Carolina. You're muted.
I'm muted because I'm trying to tweet the show out. I forgot to tweet it out. I'm working on it. But shout out to the 70-plus people that are here in the chat. Let's sort of talk about this past weekend. Obviously, Duke Carolina game draws a bunch of recruits. How much of this – first question, how similar was it to years past this weekend for North Carolina Junior Day? And then I'm going to ask you about the differences, if there were any, and the number of players and all that good stuff. But how similar was the whole setup as it has been in the past?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. I mean, I think the one coach that really kind of took it to the extreme with making it extravagant was, I think, Fedora, with different things with the blue carpet and stuff like that, and did like a fake paparazzi sort of thing when guys would arrive. But I think they treated it like a typical junior day with presentations from the nutrition staff, the strength and conditioning staff, so on and so forth. Meetings with the coordinators, meetings with the position coaches. Obviously, some guys got to meet with Bill Belichick. But I think for North Carolina and this staff in particular, prior junior days, they didn't have the full staff on campus yet. And so this was the first time that they had the full staff. So this was the first time I felt like when I was talking to recruits, they knew who the position coach would be if they were to choose North Carolina, where in the past I had guys saying, well, I talked to Diaco, I talked to Collins, I think it might be Diaco, I don't know, and it was just a little uncertainty, which obviously didn't, help situations with North Carolina recruiting that specific kid. But now, this past weekend, you had kids who said, yeah, we did all this touring. We met with the coordinator. I met with my position coach. I knew who my position coach is. And, obviously had a blast at the UNC Duke basketball game despite UNC losing.
How big a deal is it to have your position coach there for players? I would assume it's a big deal for most all of them, but your feedback from them on that aspect of this.
I think it's pretty significant because that's the person that is going to be the football dad basically for you on campus. So parents want to know who's going to be around their kid the most. The kid wants to know who they're spending time with the most. They want to feel like they mesh with them. And I think more importantly, if you go to a school and you don't know who your position coach is, and you go to a school and you do know who your position coach is, and you connect with that coach, that latter school has a huge advantage over the other school because, relationships do matter. I mean, I know we still get people who just think that this is all just a money grab and kids are just, saying who can pay me the most. That's where I'm going. That's just not the case. There are kids who are just chasing the money, but it's very few of them. It's still relationships, comfort on campus, and a lot of other elements are still factoring into these recruitments. And the relationship that actually matters the most is your relationship with your position coach.
Because you're obviously around them the most, other than the strength and conditioning and all that. But yeah, relationships matter. But I'll tell you what, if I like two cars the same, and one car is full of $1 million and the other one is full of $250,000, and they're the same car, I'm picking the $1 million car. So I get it. I get it. You say money's not a huge thing, but
I think so. Here's the thing. So these kids, it's not like one school's offering you $1 million, another school's offering you $2,000. You know what I mean? It's usually like everybody's kind of in the same ballpark. So for the most part, there are definitely outliers, but so other things, because a lot of, especially now, everybody has it kind of structured on how much they want to pay for each position and where they kind of project you. And then really the only people who are making money that would just make your head spin are the top, 100, 250 recruits. If you're a 3-star guy, no one's trying to outbid everybody else because they realize, okay, if you don't want to come here, there's a bunch of mid 3-star guys I can bring here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at it and you see all the discussion of money. I appreciate you sort of clearing it up a little bit, or at least putting it on a relevant scale that it's not all about the Benjamins. And that's one thing that I think recruiting's got I don't know if it's a bad rap, but it's a different rap, as everybody thinks it's all about the money, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. They've had the opportunity to get around, and relationships matter. Don, you mentioned the Duke basketball game. I'll ask the question everybody asks: how big I just want to go to the Duke basketball game is that for recruits? It's like a ticket to
I think everybody. I happen to have some friends over Saturday night, and some of my friends, unfortunately, are NC State fans, NC State alum. And I just asked the one guy, I was like, if I had tickets for UNC Duke, would you go? He's absolutely. And so if you are a fan of their arch nemesis, it's a bucket list game. So so it's a great tool. I think that prior coaches have learned in the past that you got to be careful, because do you want to use it on this national kid who won't think twice about you afterwards, but maybe you slightly improve your chances with him? Or is it better to use it on another kid that could, that you have a much better chance with, who might not be a top 100 kid? And so there is that balance there. And there is that having relationships with these recruits and those around the recruits to get an understanding of, is this a waste or not? And I mean, the fact is that the football staff does not get an unlimited amount of tickets for any basketball game, especially this game. So there is a cap on how many guys they can bring in. And so that is a factor. But I mean, I would imagine that I think North Carolina did a really good job of getting a lot of top targets that with legitimate chance with there. There are definitely some guys who I wouldn't be surprised if we never hear from again.
Let me ask you a historical question, and we're talking with Don Callahan on Inside Carolina's Noon Dish. Of course, it's all about football recruiting on Wednesdays at noon, and that is Don Callahan. I'm Tommy Ashley. Don, how many people have actually chosen Carolina because they got to go to the Duke Carolina basketball game? I mean, how big a deal?
I don't think anyone has.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
What's the purpose? Is it the environment? To pull guys in, to get them in, and then like Armando Bacot would say on the basketball side, if you don't want to commit, don't visit. Well, that's a way to get people on campus and at least to get a shot at somebody. But the purpose of the Duke basketball game, is it that just to lure guys on campus and then you do the work recruiting?
Let me take it to a personal story. Okay.
It makes me a little nervous, but go ahead.
When I was looking for my first house, right? I remember we went into a house that had a freshly baked batch of cookies. First of all, you smelled it when you walked in, and it was sitting on the table, and there was a sign saying, please take as many as you like. We didn't choose that house, but that house definitely stuck out in my head to this day. And this is not the current house I'm in, the house prior. So we're talking, 15 years, more than 15 years now. So
you haven't forgotten the cookies.
No, haven't forgot the cookies. Now, it didn't make me choose the house, but it definitely helped that house. You know what I mean? I'm not going to choose a house based off the cookies, but it made the experience memorable. And that's the same thing for North Carolina. I mean, and that's really, is there any other basketball game at any other school? And I don't follow college basketball, although I'm super excited about March Madness because I don't have a child traveling for AAU this spring. So I'm super excited for March Madness and going to do a lot of cramming this next week, really. But is there any other basketball game that remotely reaches the point of excitement that a UNC Duke basketball game?
Not in these parts. I mean, the SEC will argue Alabama, Auburn, mess like that, but not around here for sure, no.
Yeah, I mean, that game was held, at noon? Or was that the 3 o'clock game? So, I can't remember.
I was on the road. Yeah. I was covering Carolina baseball, man. That's what I do. I was at the baseball. But, yeah, your point. Is this you mentioned the bucket list thing, and a lot of people haven't done it. And
does Preston want to be my friend?
I think Preston is like auditioning for that. But, he's a good guy, diehard Carolina. He loves some Don Callahan, so can't hate him. And Sean Crowley said he's going to cook cookies, fresh baked cookies. We're going off the rails here. Talking with Don Callahan. It's about 20 minutes in, Don. We haven't really talked about your scoops too much. What can you share from your scoops that won't violate the Tar Pit Premium message board content rules? That I will say this. I know Ben helps you with this, and I know there's a lot of pieces in this, but these are two impressive pieces of.
A third was posted today.
A third? I missed the third one.
Yeah, so we're talking about over 5,000. No, yeah, over 5,000 words. And that's why we had to break it up. That wasn't initially the plan. The plan was to post something on Monday. I started putting it together on Monday, and I'm like, I reached, I think 1,500 words, and I'm like, okay, this is too much. We need to break this up. And then when I got to Tuesday, I'm like, wow, this is another situation where I have too much going on. Let's break this up even further. So, I don't mind. Are there any guys in particular that tickled your fancy that you want to touch on at all?
Well, now that you've got me on the third one, and folks, if you're not
maybe the chat. maybe the chat throw out a name or two that we want to kind of dive into a little bit.
Let's talk about some of these local guys. Obviously,
Okay.
Kendra Harrison's one that everybody's going to talk about. That's something that'll work itself out at some point. But Texas A&M defensive tackle commit Trayshawn Ruffin out of Duplin County. He goes to North Duplin, which my roommate in college went to North Duplin, and we had more people.
That is a small. It's a junior and senior high. That's how small that school is.
Well, we had more people in biology 101 than he had in his entire school.
Yeah.
So now this guy's committed to Texas A&M. Just how does that happen?
Texas A&M actually drew him to campus twice. I think it was last season, and he's a typical SEC kid in the fact that he's massive but moves really well. Basically, a kid who you could take those parts and mold it into an NFL player, which speaks to why Belichick is so interested in him. But yeah, for Texas A&M, they love those big bodies that they can, mold into whatever they need to mold into, because obviously playing at a very small school, they might be 2A, they could be 1A. I don't know off the top of my head, but he has to do a whole lot of things that a typical defensive tackle wouldn't have to do every Friday night. So, but the attention that A&M showed him early on, and I've never been to, was it College Station, right, where A&M is located? But I've heard great things. Obviously, they have a very strong fan base, and so that stuff matters to a recruit.
Yeah, visits you got, and it's out there on social media as well. But to LSU, to Carolina, early June, Texas A&M in mid-June, and then South Carolina. Let me ask, this brings up a question, and I find it's interesting. Okay. Mr. Ruffin goes to North Duplin, who, as the chat says, a 1A school. I don't know how many people there. I'd wager it's 500 or less. And if I'm wrong, I apologize to the North Duplin crowd. But I think it's pretty close. In basketball or in other sports, a player of that caliber would go somewhere else. Basketball guys end up at some of the factories or whatever across. Why is that not the case in high school football? The rules, I understand recruiting rules in high school.
Yeah, well, we see it a little bit, a very, very little bit, like an IMG, and if you I don't know if you remember, because this was probably, I don't know, 15 years ago, but you remember Oak Ridge Academy in Greensboro got a bunch of those kids like Gabe King and I'm forgetting them all. I think Keenan, maybe Keenan, maybe that was after Keenan Allen, but that group of kids in Greensboro went there and that got shut down or whatever. I think it's harder in football because of the roster that you're dealing with. You're basketball, you need 10 kids and that's really it. So it's a little bit easier. Football, that doesn't even give you an offense if you only have 10 kids. So it's a little bit harder to do. But like I said, we do see with IMG, but it's a little bit harder to do in basketball. And plus it feels like, and I don't cover basketball, as you guys know, but it feels like in basketball, while there are some of these, basketball factory schools, for lack of a better term, I know that's, derogatory, but it feels like some of them,
I'll take it.
Some of them have lasted a long time, but a lot of them kind of pop up and then disappear. Is that accurate from what you've seen?
Some, there's a certain recruit that went to another school that I think he was one of one graduates from whatever high school it was. But yeah, to your point, it is much easier in basketball to
I should know. I should have asked Preston. He's in Greensboro.
But Oak Hill is not in Greensboro. Oak Hill is up in the mountains of Virginia, and that's been there
maybe
forever.
Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge is the one.
Yeah, but Oak Hill is another basketball place that that's a tough school. It's been there, and I believe Steve Smith was the coach there forever, if he's not still there. But at any rate, to your point, it's much harder to. And if you're going from a place like North Duplin to IMG, that is A, it's expensive. B, it's a long ways from home. So yeah, 100%.
Well, usually those situations, the expensive part is not a worry.
Got you.
You
It's
know,
taken
I
care
don't.
of.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we're talking about it quietly, but I think that it's legal what they do. So, I mean,
I think I find it fascinating that there are, and who knows how he shakes out down the road, but there are high level football players in every nook and cranny around the state and around the country, really. And it doesn't get much smaller than North Duplin. So, Mr. Ruffin on campus after being committed to Texas A&M. So, what does North Carolina have to do to flip a player like that? I mean, it's case by case. Don't give me that.
yeah,
I know you're going to say it,
yeah.
but what's the sell?
I think that North Carolina is doing exactly what it needs to do, and I think the making him feel loved up, and he goes into detail on this in the scoop, but making him feel loved up, and recruiting him hard, which the staff definitely is doing, and yeah, and just hitting on the points that are important to him, which is development and feeling comfortable. And that's what he definitely did. I think another key part, and we go to actions speak louder than words. He was only supposed to attend Friday's practice, and that turned into him staying all the way until Sunday. So that just speaks to just the comfort. And this goes back to what I've been saying. This is not a money thing with this kid, because if we're being honest, I mean, I think I think the assumption is that if Texas A&M wanted to outbid North Carolina for Ruffin, that they could, right? But North Carolina is closer, and North Carolina just hired a new coach, and they're recruiting him really hard, and sounds like he's feeling really comfortable. So I think those are going to be the things that really kind of help North Carolina's chances, and could, if North Carolina is able to flip him, it's because of his comfort level on campus and with the coaching staff.
Yep. I was in Wilmington last night covering Carolina and UNCW baseball game, which Carolina won, by the way, and also drove on 40 right past Mount Olive and North Duplin in that area. So it's not far from Chapel Hill for sure for Ruffin. Don, a couple other ones from scoop number 3. You've got your mid 3 stars that you talk about, but you also have some high level guys, Barney and I believe Julian Walker. How is obviously the Bill Belichick name is getting in the door with these folks, but how far in the door do you have to get these big time players on campus when they're being offered and being courted by all of the big time schools? The known schools, like Belichick's a name, but he hadn't done anything at Carolina yet. We'll see what happens when the season plays out. How do you get into doors to sell, be a part of this, come be of the turnaround and all that? That's what other coaches have always sold at Carolina and elsewhere, is be a part of the change, be a part of the rise and all that. What's the pitch here for these guys?
I think getting in the door, the Belichick name gets you immediately in the door with everyone, and we've seen that over and over again. And I think the next step that we need to see, and to be honest with the national recruits, we have not seen yet, and I'm not saying we're not going to see it, but we have not seen it yet, is that landing those commitments. And I think you brought up Barney. Dorian Barney, 4-star cornerback. He might not be a top 100 kid, but he's close to it. So definitely a national recruit. That's a kid a national guy that I think North Carolina could do really well with, because of the fact, just based off my conversation with him the other night, very no nonsense, very like, I want to get to the league. And the best path to get there is the path I want to take. And so I think that's the pitch there for North Carolina with him. And that's what, it's interesting. He could have gone to the basketball game on Saturday. He did not. Now, he had to meet up with some family Saturday night in Charlotte. But it's just interesting to me. And I don't know the situation with that. So maybe there's something I'm not aware of. But I would feel like if I had tickets to UNC Duke basketball game, but I had my aunt and uncle wanted me to come visit them, I'd be like, hey, can we do another time? That's just me. But for him, what was really important to him was that Friday practice, and he enjoyed seeing the pro elements as he described it, the pro style teaching of that coaching staff. So that resonates with him. Now, just to be clear, that doesn't resonate with every kid, but that's the type of kid it will resonate with, and that's the type of kid that North Carolina could potentially get, and the money doesn't matter because he's looking beyond what he can make these next 3-4 years and what he can make in in the pros. And a kid who is ranked just outside the top 100 definitely has a shot to make some big time money with his first contract in the NFL.
We're talking with Don Callahan on Inside Carolina Noon Dish. Time to talk about Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. What's interesting is when I read all of Don's scoops, I also see the great photographs from our Inside Carolina legend, Jim Hawkins. And a lot of these guys are wearing Carolina swag, and I'll bet you a fair amount of it came from Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street. Johnny T-Shirt, friends of the podcast, friends of you, the Inside Carolina Premium subscriber. They're such good friends. They give you 10% off, and they have tons of sales all the time. And then you have 10% off with your Inside Carolina Premium subscription. Get the code off the message boards and go to Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street or go to Johnny T-Shirt online. They've got everything you could ever want Carolina related. You don't need to go anywhere else to get NIL stuff, to get hoodies, sweatshirts, T-shirts, hats, Christmas ornaments, stickers for your cooler like I like to do. They've got it all. And JohnnyT-Shirt.com, Johnny T-Shirt online. National guys pay the bills. It's the Noon Dish. Okay, Don Callahan, we are back here on the Noon Dish. What is next after and we can continue to talk about specific guys if you want to, but what is next for North Carolina?
Why don't we chat, mention some names, we'll talk about them. If you don't mention any names, we're not going to talk about them.
Yeah, we will sail on down the road, and I will recommend people get on Inside Carolina's Tar Pit Premium and look at your scoops. There are now 3 parts, which that's a lot of work. It's almost a too long didn't read type thing. So that's why you need to ask the questions in the chat, but Don just wearing it out. Of course, you got Buck's column on there, which is also an interesting column today, talking about the projections for North Carolina by certain people without having seen anything from Bill Belichick on the college level. Let me ask you a question, Don, as I'm scrolling through the threads. What do you think about grass versus turf?
I was actually having this conversation with Katie, my wife, last night because I was telling her about the change over, and she was wondering why the back and forth. I guess I'm a grass guy. I'm not like too set on that though, but I think the natural grass is kind of cool, and definitely feels very collegiate. What about you?
I think the turf looks amazing and all, but there's something about walking into a place and being able to smell it. And it not smelling like a used car lot or a junkyard because of the tire smell, not because of the product.
No, I get it, but that could be clipped and put on social media.
And I thought about it after I said,
Kenan Stadium smells like a junkyard by Tommy Ashley.
Yeah, but now it's going to, you're going to walk out. You can walk on the grass. You can get a grass stain and all that, and you can still get a little bit of turf burn from grass
stains.
But you get grass stains and not shredding your skin. But yeah, I kind of like the transition. I hope they get it done, and I'm sure it'll look amazing. It is, Kenan Stadium was made for a grass field, and I think that'll be something. And shout out to the turf guys. It's not like if you have a grass field, it's going to be a cesspool like the one in Raleigh has been when they have heavy rain or when they water it on purpose. Carolina's field's going to be drainage. They're going to just upbuild. I know, man. I just, you get all over it. Preston says he's a grass fan. We're talking about the kind you mow,
Preston.
The kind you mow and the kind you play football on. But
God, Preston, what are they doing over there in Greensboro?
So it's called Greensboro for a reason. They they love it over there. It's a great town, Don. But looking forward, what's next? Obviously last weekend with the Junior Day, the Duke game, and all that, it was a huge day. What's next on the recruiting side here? Yeah,
so currently we're in spring break, and much needed for me at least because of that crazy weekend and last week. So get a little bit of a break, and then starting up next week, it's back to the spring practices, as you know. But North Carolina has done a good job of attracting recruits to visit on most of their spring practice dates. So what we're going to see this next, I guess, what is it, a little over a month now, is there's going to be a practice and there's going to be recruits there. And so it's just going to be getting the feedback from those recruits and see where things are. But overall in recruiting right now, it's a big time for unofficial visits. And then starting April 1st is when official visits can start to begin to take place. But most official visits will take place in June. There are going to definitely this year, there seems like there's a lot more scheduled for April and May, but June is still the dominant month for official visits. And then right after that, kids are making decisions either actually during their official visit schedule, or they'll wait for a date after their official visit date is scheduled, like in July, usually July, some wait all the way until August.
And when is signing day? When's the early signing day this
It
year?
is. So what is it now? The first Wednesday in December, I believe, is now the early signing period, unless I know they're always talking about changing this and that. But
if they made any big change to move it up before senior seasons and all,
they have
wouldn't go into it.
Yeah, they have talked about moving it until the end of June or sometime in the summer. But the one thing I know for certain is in the past, we've had a week in July that would be open, because basically towards the end of June, we have the dead period, the summer dead period starts. And then I'm trying to pull it up now. It is June 23rd, the summer dead period starts, and that goes all the way until basically a school's first game, but I think it's officially September 1st. But if you have a game prior to that, you're usually allowed to host recruits on that day. But yeah, so starting June 23rd, we have a massive dead period, and I'm already counting down the days for that.
So do you get to go on vacation? Do you get to go to the beach and do nothing?
Yeah. You know me. I'm not a beach guy. Although I don't know if I told you, we are going to a concert on Saturday. Did I tell you about this?
Are you going to say what it is, or are you going to slack me and tell me?
I'll say it. This is not my idea, because as you know, I'm not a huge.
You're going to Taylor Swift. You're finally doing it.
No. Although I wouldn't mind. I went to Alanis Morissette last year.
A little different.
It is. Lil Wayne is in Raleigh on Saturday. You told me that. So we're going to the Lil Wayne.
I would love to see Don Callahan at that concert. If anybody's there, if anybody's watching this and is there, we will pay premium money for videos or pictures of Don Callahan.
I haven't been to like a rap concert since I was in college, so I don't really know. What do I bring?
This is unbelievable. Don't wear cargo shorts, please. At least get your fit checked right. That's going to be hilarious. Now, I went to see Gary Clark Jr. Monday night in Charlotte.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me that. And I don't know who that is.
One of the best guitarists in the world. It was unbelievable. But anyway.
Where'd you see it at?
It was at Ovens Auditorium over there by Bojangles Coliseum in Charlotte. Yeah. A smooth 3-hour drive from here. So I got home at like after 2:00. But and then was in Wilmington last night. So it's been a long week. Anyway, looking at it. So, guys visit, they do all that and commitments and all. Is this going to be a situation where, in your opinion, obviously it's early, that Carolina is going to try and have classes finished, or the class finished, 26 class finished, like the former staff used to do by December? Do you get a feel of that?
My feel is that because of the way that recruiting is, that most of the class will be finished by the end of June. But with how this staff continues to, recruit and try to find guys like they did with Eidan Buchanan last night, or I should say Tuesday night for people who aren't watching this live, I would imagine that they would keep their eyes open during the season to see, who pops up, who could be potentially added later on.
So it's never ending. Yep, and look at that music nut in the chat talking about concerts. Music nut pops up. Feels like Belichick is never done, and that's right. I mean, especially this cycle. They've been trying to fill a roster and all that, and get as many players as possible. Anything left from the 25 class, Don? Do you think? I mean, it's kind of late in the day.
I don't think so, but we still have a couple months before they can enroll. So, but Bruiser has a question. Has only one practice had media availability?
And
yes.
Was Don there?
And Don was there, and Don blinked and he missed the entire practice.
Missed the entire availability. Don was actually standing beside me.
That's right.
For a good portion of that. So yeah.
And my arm around your shoulder.
No, we don't do that. We don't show PDA in public. But anyway, so all right, let me ask you about the quarterback recruiting. Everybody says you need one per cycle, whatever. It seems like the net, even with Bryce Baker in the fold, even if Bryce Baker is QB1 this fall, which I personally think he will be, that hasn't stopped them from going after many names and many prospects at quarterback. Is that different? Is that a different approach?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Very different. And I just wonder what the repercussions ultimately will be, because this is a position that they transfer a lot if they're not playing, and it makes sense. I mean, because it's not like any other position. You only have one that really can play for the most part. So you bring in two, you're going to lose one really quickly. And the one exception is Zaid Lott is a guy who I think is going to school. Chose North Carolina because UNC education was extremely important to him. His mom, I believe, is a principal or vice principal, if I'm remembering correctly. So education is very important to their family, and location was very important. So maybe he's kind of the exception to where he sticks around longer because he's going to school for school. But I think in general, it's the more guys that you add, the more likely guys are going to be transferring out. And so that's obviously different than what Mac would do, where Mac was very focused on retention. And this is going to be a little bit different than that.
Yeah, it's going to be fluid, I think. And, it's not a bad thing. It's just it's the new nature of it. It's kind of like, the Simpsons meme where Homer walks in, takes his hat off. I think it's Homer. It might be one of the other characters, but he takes his hat off.
I think it's his dad.
It's his dad. He takes his hat off. He puts it on there, and he goes back and grabs his hat and walks right back out the door. It may be like that. And you can thank the NCAA for that. I mean, that's the way things work. How important is it for recruits to see a practice? We mentioned the Friday practice. And when you talk to recruits, how big a deal is it to actually see a legit practice going on for them? Because for me, if I were a recruit, I would watch it, but I don't know if it would really be effectual for me. What is it that you're getting
so
from these guys?
I think you touched on it a little bit. I think you like this case by case. Like I mentioned, Dorian Barney, that the practice mattered to him, was impactful to him. But I think with most other kids, they probably would watch it like you would, where you kind of watch it, get a feel. You're talking to your parents, talking to your buddies while you're there, that sort of thing. You're not like soaking in as much as some other kids who are really trying to digest everything. It's very similar to, I know it was a long time ago. Well, maybe you are the exception because, I'm talking about looking at colleges. I can remember when I looked at colleges, and it just came to the point where everything kind of just, I don't want to say look the same, but it's just, you visit, I visit like a handful of schools, and it just starts to kind of run into each other. And even when I went through the process with my daughter, when she was looking at schools, it's like everything starts to run together. And did this one say they have a bus for here? Did this one say that, this about the food plan, that sort of thing? And so I think that's I would imagine that's the same for recruits also, and for practice, to go back to your question.
Yeah, for me, there was one choice. and then we did tour some with the boys and saw some other schools.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, you finish yours. I have a question for you though. Go ahead.
But they, you go visit other places. You think you want to go one place, and this is relevant to the recruiting. You think you want to go one place, yeah, I'm going there, no doubt. And then you go visit other places, like, wait a minute, maybe that place is good. And, that's why these guys take all these visits. I saw you had one recruit that had 6 officials already.
Yeah, there's one with 7.
Yeah, and that's obviously a change from the old way of doing it. Guys can go on as many officials as they want to. And quite frankly, I do the same thing. But folks that think that such and such Johnny linebacker is a sure thing for one school, they go on a bunch of visits and you never know. So, watch what they do, not what they say, to sort of quote Sherelle McMillan. What was your question, Don?
Well, so before I get to my question, because it brought up another idea, it's going to be really interesting to me to watch how these official visits kind of lay out. And what we saw last year was, one, most kids at most scheduled 4 official visits, mostly because there's only 4 weekends in June. And that's kind of the same thing this year too. But what we also saw was that, because you always ask, what's the most important official visit position to have? And it's the last one. The problem is you have to do, through your due diligence, decide what will be the last one. Will it be June 20th, that final weekend, or will it be the first weekend of June because the kid goes a place and commits? Because what we saw a lot last year was a kid went on 1 or 2 official visits, had others scheduled, but committed to a school and shut down the rest of the recruitment. Now, with these kids taking 7 official visits, taking official visits in April, and take 1 official visit in April, 4 in June, or a couple in May and 4 in June. Like, how does this kind of happen? Are we going to see some kids commit in April and shut it completely down, or will they visit a school in April and then go visit schools in June? And you got to think that school that hosts them in April is going to be at a huge disadvantage. So it's going to be interesting. But question actually comes from the chat. Bruiser Net, who's on fire today, starting off hot with the Go Phillies, now has a good question for you that I think that you can answer. What percentage of the spring roster do you expect to be around in the fall? How do you feel about our talent going into the 2025 season versus 2024 season? Which was a question that we talked about a little bit with Jason I guess it was more than a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt at this point that the talent production-wise last year is going to be higher than it is going into this season. You had, obviously, Hampton, you had Rucker, you had Elijah Huzzy, you had those guys, Power Eccles at linebacker, all the defensive linemen. So from a pure production part, the talent that left, that's going to be tough to refill and to replenish. But the question is, and that's the big $64,000 question with the new coaching staff, is can they get the talent production out of the guys that maybe didn't have an opportunity or didn't produce as much last year? As far as the percentages on how much, I think we're going to see, I don't want to say significant because people read that into different, but it would not surprise me to see some transfers that are surprising. We'll say that. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast is, whether it's a culture thing, you can talk about that. You can say, they're soft or whatever. They don't want to do this or that, but it's not always about that. Maybe some don't want to deal with the harshness of it or whatever, however you want to frame it. But I also think you got to look at the way coaches do things, the schemes that they use, the different things like that. And I think that's relevant to each individual person across the board. It's not a one-size-fits-all for every single person or football player. And when you have however many are out there, 100, 120 if they had the full allotment, or 105, and then you're going to have guys that just, it doesn't work for me. It's no different than somebody, getting rid of a vehicle that may be a classic car and they say, well, I just don't like it, so that I think there will be some, it will not be, I don't want to stir it up, but I think there will be some transfers that are like, wow, why, and things like that. But who knows?
We saw that before the spring too.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got
I
everybody
thought
says
Masterson was a future left tackle, future draftable left tackle.
yeah, and I think a lot of people thought that, but I mean, sometimes it doesn't work or fit or whatever for individual players, and that's the nature of it. Like I said, you can thank the NCAA for giving, rightfully so, giving kids opportunities to move on from football or move on to another school that they think will be better for them, and everybody has to make their own choices. So, as far as the percentage, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me to see names that we don't really talk about that are important in the fall, that we thought were important now. I don't know. A lot of that to say, who knows ultimately. Don, we need to get to top 5 because we're 51 minutes in.
Uh-oh.
And the longer I talk, the more people left to chat.
All right. So a couple of things before we get to that. Preston mentions player numbers seem to be mentioned in the past. A few recruits mentioned the player numbers and were like kind of shaking their head, didn't understand what that was about. For us media members, it's terrible because especially when you're standing 100 yards away from players, it's hard to identify them. And then the other thing was, and I guess this goes into the top 5, so it's a good segue. BruiserNet, if UNC is not playing, no other team will be appointment viewing for me. We'll watch random games at night after golf. I'm excited. I'm different. I am going to be watching.
Because you're a better betting man. Don't lie.
Whoa. Oh, that's right. It's legal now.
Yes.
So I am excited for that Thursday, Friday. I already have some semi plans for that Friday for some people to come over starting in the morning or afternoon or whatever. So, and I was hoping, I don't know. I was trying to get my top 5 together. I don't know what the hell to do. I mean, I don't know these teams. I know Auburn has a good player. I know Cooper Flagg, and I guess his mother pisses people off with Duke. And beyond that, I know I did watch a little bit of the Auburn-Alabama game the other day. I don't know what I'm getting into. So I'm hoping that you guys can help me. That's what this is for. This is an exercise to help Don prepare for the coming weeks.
Well, I will say that I would wager that a large portion of the North Carolina fan base will be pulling for anybody playing Duke. And at this point this year, who do you want to win the national championship? It's anybody but Duke. I would guess that. But I'll pay attention to Auburn. I like Houston. I want to check out St. John's because, it's fascinating that St. John's is on the trash heap, and then a certain coach that a lot of people criticize, and, some.
All right, so who is the coach?
Rick Pitino.
Rick Pitino's there. I think someone did tell me that the other day.
And he's got a lot of skeletons.
His son's coaching, right?
I forget where he coaches. He coaches somewhere else. But, yeah, he's a pretty good coach as well. But it's anybody but Duke. Eric Russ mentions UConn, Houston, Auburn, Alabama, St. John. So we're pretty much in lockstep there. I watched UConn to see Hurley melt down. Can't deny that he's a great coach, but boy, he can give it to the officials a lot. And then there's always going to be a team like UNCW made the tournament last night. They beat Delaware and they advanced. So you pay attention to them. But name me some teams, Don, and then I'll read off. Well, I'll go ahead and do it for you to help you out. Kentucky to lose, accurate. UNCW. This is Preston, by the way, if you're listening. Louisville. I don't really care about Louisville anymore. Clemson, and then Duke to lose. I think Clemson's really good, but until they beat somebody of note this season, not named Duke, we'll have to watch and see. Sean Crowley, Michigan State, Florida, Duke to lose, St. John's, Robert Morris as underdog, and then Rust, UConn, Houston, Auburn, Alabama, St. John's. It's the year of the Southeastern Conference.
So yes, that's the other thing I picked up is that the SEC all of a sudden turned into a football conference, a basketball conference. But you mentioned earlier, is it correct that UNC basically would have to beat Duke, win the ACC in order to make the tournament?
I think so. And it starts today at 2:30, I guess, in an hour and a half-ish, depending on the first game.
I'm going to be watching.
I mean, I'll be right back here doing a post-game show. So if this all looks familiar, folks, you'll see it at about 6:30. But
maybe you should invite me on.
Yeah, you can come on. You can show up in the back. You can sit back here, and
I'll sit back there. And then when I leave, there won't be any football.
You can be like, but yeah, I mean, I think Carolina's got to beating Notre Dame and beating Wake Forest doesn't move the needle. I think they would have to beat Duke on Friday night, and kind of is what it is. You know, you play a long season to get where you are, and when the ACC is trash, you got to beat at least one or two of the good teams. But Thomas Morton in the chat, and we're about to get out of here. Good pull on these. BYU, Clemson, St. John's, High Point, and Drake. Gonzaga beat St. Mary's last night. I listened to that on the way home. So Gonzaga's always a fun listen. But yeah, that'll do it for me. Anything left? Anything left you got?
Did you have did you give your top 5?
I did. I already did.
I bet.
And Bruisernet says 6:30. I meant 4:30. 5 o'clock. Depending on when the Carolina game is over, we'll be right back here live with Rob Harrington on Inside Carolina Postgame Show. What is Don Callahan doing on spring break?
I mean, this week?
Yeah. You just sitting in your man tower.
Working. Actual spring break? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. What is Tommy doing on spring break?
I got one child in the Outer Banks and one here at home, and the puppy keeps me busy. Dude, I tried to take a nap yesterday. I tried to take a nap yesterday before I left for UNCW, and I'm laying on the couch, and I feel something doing this, and I look up, and it's my dog. Won't let me sleep. So it's a hard life, Don. Let's get out of here.
All right.
Before I do, shout out to Congruity, other sponsor of this podcast. Email Matt at congruityhr.com to get your small, mid-sized business free assessment. Tell them Inside Carolina sent you. They grew their business to be a national brand. They can certainly do it for you. And check out Johnny T-shirt, like I mentioned. And also Big Game USA gets you, what is this? What do you call this? I call it the official game ball of North Carolina Tar Heels.
Buy one and send it to my house.
Yeah. Don Callahan wants one for his birthday. You can see if you can help him out. I'm not giving up mine. Big Game loves Inside Carolina. We love them. Great sponsors. Check them out. Links in the chat, links on the board. Everywhere you look, link to Big Game USA to get your Carolina official Jordan Elite game ball. Don, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
See you later, Tommy.